Hello everybody and welcome back to Full House Sports. Here myself, Charlie. A reminder before the video starts to please like, comment and subscribe. Anything you guys do is greatly appreciated as I try and become a one-man sports news bandwagon. Now, last night was a busy night in the UFC. There was a lot going on. Firstly, there was the UFC 326 card that was headlined by Max Holloway versus Charles de Bronx Oliveira. A fight that promised to be fun, but I think it's fair to say turned into a bit of a grappling match in which Oliveira was very dominant in. Now, before I get into the other stuff that was announced last night, I've got a little bit of a pet peeve for this BMF title because when it was first introduced, I got it. It felt like a moment because it was so well suited to that sort of type of fighter. You know, Masvidal and Diaz and those fighters who, let's be realistic, were probably not going to win titles, as in the main belt, but were fun fighters. Now it feels like a weird interim lightweight featherweight belt, which I'm not actually sure if it's serving its purpose anymore. It feels gimmicky, I'm guessing. Whereas before it was a great idea, I think now it's gimmicky. It for me, it needs getting rid of, and that's the brutal honest truth. I think get rid of it because there's no real point to it, and if it's meant to be for toe-to-toe fights, then you probably need to change the rules for those fights. Say, look, if we're going to do BMF title matches, then there's going to be different rules to make sure it's a BMF match. But again, then you're starting to get a bit WWE with it, and I'm not exactly sure if that's what, as you MMA fans, we want to see. The other huge news, amongst other things, was the news surrounding the UFC White House card, the UFC Freedom 250 card on July 4th, which has been met with a very negative reaction. And I 100% get it. Headlined by Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje. We've also got Alex Pereira, Poatan, my favourite fighter, going up against Cyril Gane. Sean O'Malley is also on the card. I'm trying to remember who else is on it, to be honest with you. But not a great card, I think. Or a good card, but one that I think, compared to what we were promised, leaves a lot to be desired. And I think that in itself at the minute is the problem the UFC has, is are they struggling at the minute with the product? A lot of fans, and listen, we live in a very reactionary society now where if you go on social media, you can develop a narrative quite quickly and the narrative spreads. But I do think the product in the UFC is arguably going stale. I think there's a variety of factors. I said in a video a few months ago about this, or a month ago about this, when it was Paddy versus Gaethje, that for starters, I think they've ruined what made them so good. Because when UFC was on the come up and people were starting to say, this could overtake boxing, people were saying, well, the best fight the best. You're always going to get that because it's one organisation. And now we're not getting that as much. We're not getting, for example, Ilia versus Makhachev. We're not getting, for example, I think Jones Pereira was always going to be a tough one to make because John Jones knows his value now. But the suggestion was he was willing to come back for this card. You know, we're not getting the big fights, the fights that we want to see. Aspinall Pereira, I know he's got eye problems at the minute, but there's a lot going on at the minute that I think we're watching and we're going, and there's a lot of waiting around as well for big fights to happen, which again never used to be a thing. When I was, I remember Bisping fighting Georges St-Pierre, then fighting in Gastelum in Shanghai, I think 26 days later. Now that's ill-advised, of course, but there was no waiting round for these fights. Feels like everyone's waiting on their shot now, which was never a thing in the UFC. I do wonder if the product has gone stale. It's worth remembering also Michael Chandler as well is on the card at the White House. That's just popped up in my memory. Again, it does look like there's going to be a return for McGregor. I'm not angry about that. I don't think UFC cutting ties with him is a bad move, to be honest, with the way that he's behaved and the other stuff outside of the ring. The Jones thing is weird because he seems to be suggesting he was willing to come back. We knew realistically there was probably not going to be many, if any, Russian fighters on this card because of the implications of that, of what that means. But still, I think a little bit disappointed with the fights at the minute that are coming out. And I think last night was just a culmination where you had as well. I think if we were walking away going, Holloway Oliveira, fight of the night, yeah, brilliant. You know, and DeBronx has won a 25-minute war, and we're going, yeah. And then he gets to win a Ilya versus Gaethje. But we didn't get that, and I think it was just a culmination of things. But I do worry or wonder if the product is going stale. If they do need to go back to what made them great, to use a certain Mr. Trump said, do they need to make themselves great again, make the UFC great again? These guys should be fighting more often. They should be waiting on their title shots, and stop going down the gimmicky route and start just making the best fight the best would be my advice. But Dana White's a very successful businessman. He doesn't need my advice, let's face it. It's just something that I think something needs solving. Is he potentially is he interested in boxing? Does he want to get out of UFC now? I don't know. I'm speculating perhaps too much there, but it's an interesting point. Has the product gone stale? Let us know what you think. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Anything you guys do is greatly appreciated. What would your White House card look like? Let me know. What would your dream White House card look like? If you could do 5 fights in the UFC, let me know. I think a lot of them were saying Harrison Nunes, but I think Harrison's injury, we're never going to get that. You know, Poatan, Jones, anything. Let us know what you want. Let us know what you wanted, please. And like I say, please like, comment, and subscribe. I've been Chad, Full House Sports. Have a great day.